Hi, today we are going to talk about how to organize an AGM for a Hong Kong company. This is a question I've been asked a few times recently, so I thought I would do a quick video on it. We're also going to look at some pro forma documentation just to make life extra easy too. So our agenda, which is back a slide. First of all, what is an AGM? Why do they have to happen? The steps needed to convene one, follow-up actions, and also how you can get some exemptions or do away with them altogether. So what is an AGM? Primarily, it's there to provide a yearly update to the shareholders. This may, in some cases, be their only form of formal access to the directors, especially as a group and as a body. It's the time where the shareholders can get together and can vote on items. Now, whilst you can also do that in extraordinary general meetings, typically, unless it's time critical, this is the kind of thing an AGM is for. It's to focus on the financial performance. The accounts will actually be approved, and it is also a place where items such as director's appointment, remuneration can be voted on by the shareholders and approved. Other things such as dividends and order report also goes into this. The steps required. Well, first of all, you have to have a board meeting. So that meeting of the directors will approve the accounts and will decide when to do the AGM, and that's to ensure that there's enough notice period within it and that it's the right time. And we'll get on to those points a bit later. After you've had that board meeting of the directors where you've agreed the date of the AGM, you send the notice to the shareholders. You then collate the replies, any proxies, often some questions as well. Then when it comes to the AGM, it's important to stick to the agenda, and then afterwards to document the AGM very carefully and have it signed off. When the AGM has to happen, we've got there at the bottom. For a simple private company, it is 9 months after its accounting reference period ends. So if your audited accounts run to the end of December, then you have to do this by the end of September, 9 months on. Simple as that. That's assuming it's not a subsidiary of a public company. The board meeting. So as we said before, you need the board meeting to hold the AGM. That board meeting also will approve the financials and ensure the timing gives you 21 clear days before the AGM happens. So the day that you give notice, there should be 21 clear days after that. In practice, I tell people to go for 23, 24, 25 days to make absolutely sure there is no danger there. You should also check the memorandum and articles of the company because they may require a longer period. And finally, in that board meeting, you should be agreeing the agenda and including any other items that need to be discussed or approved on by the shareholders. So here's an example minutes of the directors. So the top half is as normal. You've got the chairman elected. You've got the quorum put in place. You have the appointment of a director. You have then in the bottom half here, the director's report and audited accounts being accepted. And then we go on to the directorate. So we talk about appointment of directors by single resolutions. This is lots of administrative work, but it's there. We then go into the final dividend for the year. We then have the director's fee. Any kind of change in bank signatories, this is a good opportunity to have it. And then, as we should with the vast majority of meetings, we have a declaration of interest. So if the directors have some interest, they should be disclosing it to the meeting and it should be documented here. And then finally, in this board meeting, we have the annual general meeting and the date that is resolved to be held. This is then obviously signed off by the chairman. So the notice is sent out, and that notice can be very simple. It can very simply just be an email with the key information being the date, time, location, and the agenda. As I said, that can be a simple email. It can be posted on the website. It could be a formal printed notice. You need to ensure that everybody gets it, and it's fairly assumed that people get it. So if you know someone's changed address, you don't post it to their old address, you post it to their new address. Shareholders can appoint proxies and they can appoint representatives if they can't attend. Also, you can run things like the AGM virtually, so you might choose to include Zoom or Hangout, etc. Details on that for people to come in. And we said it before, but ensure sufficient time, so 21 clear days, unless it's a longer period. You next need to collate the replies, and I would ensure that all communication back is dealt with so that the shareholders know they're being listened to and know that their questions are being answered. Even if that is to say this question will be dealt with during the meeting, you should still reply to them. Make sure you know the proxies and the representatives, so you can sign the representatives into the meeting. You check their ID, etc., make sure they are properly appointed. And for proxies, they should be totaled up in advance and given to the chairman, so the chairman can decide, has those numbers to hand as such. Sometimes shareholders might be asking questions on the accounts. Those can be deferred until the shareholders meeting, or you may choose to answer them then. Next is the documentation. So make sure you document who attended, apologies, the proxies, the votes, everything you can. Make sure you write it down because it will be forgotten quite quickly. Any discussion around points should also be documented. So we don't just say it was agreed, we point out any points of discontent or things that were explained in further detail. The minutes should be signed by the chairman as soon as possible, and the minutes don't get filed with the company registry, they just get sent to the minute books. So they're not a point of public record as such. So here's an example set of minutes for an annual general meeting. So the top half of this is explaining what it is, and then we talk about the chairman, we talk about the quorum, appointment of director, audit accounts. This is all mirroring very much what was done in the board meeting. And that's quite normal because you want the board members to actually agree to things before it goes to the shareholders. We have the dividend, director's fee. Even if it's zero, I think it's worthwhile stating in here that it is zero and having that signed off. We then have the authorization of allotment of shares. So here we just have the ability that the directors can issue extra shares without having to have prior approval of the company. This gives a little bit of flexibility and enables the directors to raise more capital if need be. So that's the middle here. And then we have the change of bank signatories as we did before. And the specimen signatures, declaration of interest, end of meeting, and it's signed off by the chairman. What I have here is just an example of a consent to short notice. So if you need to do the AGM very urgently and you can get the required votes, which is generally a super majority, this is the format of resolution or consent that you could have, and you'd expect this signed by all of the consenting shareholders. This is quite easy to do, but you only do it in exceptional circumstances where you need these things to happen very quickly. Exemptions from having an AGM. So the new company's ordinance has stipulated the circumstances that can exempt a company from holding an AGM. And basically, we have these four here. So if a company does everything it needs to do at an AGM through written resolution, and the copies of the documents are required to be laid or produced at the meeting or circulated to each member on or before the circulation date of the written resolution, it can do so. What that broadly means is you can have a written resolution that all the shareholders sign, and that does away with having to have a formal meeting. This is of great use if you have small numbers of shareholders, kind of 2 or 3, and they're geographically displaced. A single member company, so one with only one shareholder, does not require to hold an AGM, but does need to acknowledge that fact, and it's good to have that minuted. You can dispense with the AGM by a written resolution or a resolution at a general meeting that's passed by all members. If that's the case, you still need to circulate everything that's required. So shareholders have to get the accounts every year. That's the critical thing. And then lastly, a dormant company is also exempted from the requirements to hold AGMs. Dormancy requires a filing, and the filing is from that date. You can also get a full dispensation from having an AGM. And if that's it, you need to have a written resolution or a resolution at a general meeting by all members. And that then goes from the financial year to which is after passing that resolution. So it's not in the current year, it's generally the next one. But as we've noted in this last half of this, the company still has to circulate all documents that are required to be laid before an AGM, such as financial statements, directors' reports, auditors' reports, etc. So getting rid of the AGM doesn't prevent the circulation of this information. It doesn't reduce that compliance burden. It just stops the need to have an actual physical meeting as such. That's it. We might do something else on some extreme circumstances in AGMs and how to field questions and what's allowable and not allowable. But this is the basics of how to run an AGM in Hong Kong. Any questions, as always, please let me know. Thank you.